So there's this radical anti-feminist YouTuber by the name of Vinny, but he was previously called the ignored gender, and the reason why I know this is because I used to watch him like many years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, back when I was an edgy anti-feminist myself. Thankfully those days are behind me, and now when I watch this video, instead of agreeing with his shit arguments, I'm now laughing my ass off at them, and I want you to join in with the laughter. So here we go.
I've made quite a few videos about how feminism harms men. But feminism is about equal opportunity. Yes, equal opportunity to screw over both sexes, not just men.
Oh, this should be good.
If there is a war on women, then the enemy is feminism. And I am on the women's side of that war.
Yeah, okay, you're not fooling anyone.
From violent crimes to the wage gap, feminists love to spread factoids around.
So, violent crimes against women don't exist? Yeah, I know that's not what he exactly meant, but the way he phrased that sentence, it sounded kind of like that. As for the wage gap, I'm going to link some sources in the description about that. And yeah, I know some of the sources are going to be from biased outlets, but those biased outlets, by the way, it's Everyday Feminism, it's a feminist website on the internet. They actually refer to actual credible sources that aren't biased, so shut it.
The women who actually believe the feminist lies are made to feel hopeless and depressed because they really believe that the odds are stacked against them.
Right, so it's not the fault of systemic oppression against women that women are feeling hopeless and depressed. It's feminism's fault for pointing it out. Yeah, sure.
One of the main goals of feminism is to perpetuate the victim status for women. They must hold on to that victim card.
And here we go again with the same song and dance that right-wing people always do about victim cards and professional victimhood and all that bullshit. Do you guys ever get tired of using buzzwords all the time? Just wondering.
And I think this not only harms men, but women as well.
Okay, now I'm fucking curious.
Now, even though feminists say that women are strong, capable, and independent, their actions don't seem to be consistent with their words. Their words say one thing, but their actions say something else. Deep down, feminists really want women to believe that they are weak.
Is that really what we want? I mean, what would feminists gain from making women think that they're weak? It seems like you're just pulling this out of your ass.
For instance, feminists want women to believe that they need affirmative action in order to compete with men in the labor market. They feel that women should get as much help as possible. But if they are so strong and capable, then they shouldn't need this extra help.
Are you purposely ignoring the point of these laws? They're not in place because women are weak and they need extra assistance. They're in place because of workplace discrimination. Employers will be more inclined to hire men over women because of the presupposition that men are better workers than women. So these laws are an attempt to try and balance this discrimination out. Granted, they're certainly not perfect, as I believe that reformism is not an adequate method of smashing oppression, but it's still better than nothing. And it seems like you're just being intentionally deceptive here, just so you have something to challenge feminists with.
They don't seem to be too angry when women aren't held to the same standards as men for the same job. You would think the feminists would be livid that women are held to lower standards for the fitness test to become police officers, as this implies that women aren't as capable as men. But they are rather quiet about it.
Yeah, we are quiet about it. The reason why we are is because women are physically weaker than men on average. This is a scientific fact, and it's one we acknowledge. Therefore, it would be unfair to hold men and women to the exact same standards when it comes to physical fitness tests and physical labor.
However, they certainly will yell discrimination if that male officer earns more than the female officer.
Yes, because if women are biologically weaker than men on average, then it would be unfair if they are paid less because of their difference in biology. It's not the average woman's fault if she is biologically weaker than the average man. So why should the average woman be paid less than the average man?
It's fine that women have an easier time getting a job solely because of their sex, but it's unacceptable that even one man makes more than a woman, even though that man did more work.
When you say it's considered unacceptable for a man to earn more money for doing more work, you conveniently forget to mention that this is only for physical labor. Of course, the man will be doing more work when it comes to physical labor, because the man is stronger than the woman on average. However, when you forget to mention that this is only for physical labor, then it makes it seem as though women do less work in all jobs, physical or non-physical, which simply isn't the case.
Feminists will also say things like, a female authority figure isn't taken as seriously as a male authority figure, and says that this is because of how society views women as inferior and not to be taken seriously.
Yep.
Now, a woman who buys into this feminist garbage would really believe that nobody will take her seriously simply for being a woman, and that no matter what she does, she won't be treated with the proper respect.
We're not claiming that no matter what women do when they're in positions of authority, that people won't take them seriously. We're saying that society generally doesn't accept women in positions of power and authority, as well as they do with men in positions of power and authority. It's still possible for a woman in a position of authority to gain respect. However, they have to go through more obstacles in order to gain that respect than with a man.
For some women, this will create a self-fulfilling prophecy. If she believes that nobody will respect her, then she will project these inner feelings outwardly, and she won't get the same respect that she would have received otherwise.
So pretty much all the insecurities that women tend to have are all chalked up to feminism. Yeah, that makes sense. So what about women who are not feminists, or women who are even anti-feminists, and still feel these insecurities? What about them?
But generally speaking, nobody bases this on gender. It's all about how you present yourself. If you portray yourself with confidence and charisma, then your gender won't matter.
But the thing is that a lot of people tend to have presuppositions of men and women, which they base off of gender roles. The gender role for men is that they're strong, aggressive, and dominant, as well as unemotional, uncaring, and are rather more logical and more rational. The gender role for women, however, is that they are passive, timid, emotional, caring, and submissive, and opt out of being rational and logical for being emotional minded. In many ways, the female gender role is the antithesis of the male gender role. Now, when it comes to someone who's in a position of authority, which one of those two gender roles do you think is better suited? Of course it's going to be the male gender role, because being aggressive and dominant is better suited for being in a position of authority than being emotional or timid. Now the thing is that many people assume that men are biologically linked to their gender roles, and women are biologically linked to their gender roles. Therefore, they make the assumption that most women are biologically emotional and timid and submissive, whereas with men, they think that they are biologically rational, aggressive, and dominant. This would lead them to think that men are better suited for being in positions of authority, while women aren't as well suited to be in positions of authority. If many people hold these gendered biases, then yes, gender will matter in this situation, and that's something that feminists want to abolish.
You'll get respect if you earn it. That's a concept that feminists don't seem to understand. To them, respect is something women should just be entitled to, not something that women should have to earn like everybody else.
Again, this is just a straw man. Feminists don't believe this at all. All we want is for a society to truly perceive women as equal to men, so that women can have an equal playing field in order to gain respect.
But if you don't earn respect, it's not likely that you're going to get it. How are you going to get respect if you complain about every little thing and blame it on discrimination, rather than taking responsibility for your own actions?
I've already discussed why this argument is bullshit.
Instead of wondering what you could do to earn a higher wage, you merely play the victim card and say that women are the victims of discrimination and that's why women make less. You say that you're independent and don't need a man, yet you push for more legislation.
How, in any way, is wanting to pass laws that attempt to alleviate gender discrimination supposed to make someone dependent? How is it hypocritical for a feminist to be independent and to not need any man, while also wanting to pass legislation that attempts to prevent gender discrimination?
You went from husband Sam to Uncle Sam. So instead of being dependent on one man, you depend on the taxpayers, which include multiple men.
Do women not pay taxes?
So feminists don't need a man. They need more government. They want more handouts, freebies, and government programs for women only. That's quite the opposite of being independent.
Firstly, this completely ignores the currents of feminism which don't want more government, and which actually goes against government, such as the anarcho-feminists, which I'm one of. The feminists that you are describing, who are pushing for more laws and taxes and legislation and so forth, are liberal feminists, who attempt to bring down the patriarchy through reformist methods. Secondly, you've even strawmanned the liberal feminists as well. It's not that liberal feminists want female superiority, it's that they want to be on an equal playing field to men, and they think that by passing laws they can achieve this. Granted, I believe that this type of thinking is very flawed. but I still understand that it's not meant to be female superiority.
Feminists also talk about how women are the ones who feel unsafe walking down dark alleyways, and that's why we still need feminism. I always wonder, why is feminism needed for that exactly? What can feminism possibly do to not make women afraid to walk down dark alleyways?
Well, feminists have been trying to bring light to the prevalence of rape in society in an attempt to get people to crack down harder on rapists and sex offenders. After all, an incredibly high number of rapists don't even go to jail for their actions, and even a very high number of rapists go completely unreported. What feminism is trying to do is it's trying to bring light to just how prevalent rape is in society, so that people can do more about it and prevent it further, so that women can, in turn, feel safer when they walk down dark alleyways. It's a rather simple concept to grasp, and yet you can't seem to get behind it.
People feel the way they feel. It can't be helped. Just because you're afraid doesn't mean there was anything to be afraid of. You could walk down an alley worried that you're going to get raped, robbed, or killed, but if nothing happens, then what did you really have to worry about?
Just because nothing happened to you in that one moment, that doesn't mean that the threat isn't real. It's not as if walking down a dark alleyway is like being afraid of a monster in your closet or something. The monster in your closet is obviously not real, but the threat of being raped is very real.
What's the real issue here? Being afraid that you might get raped, or actually getting raped? Because it's the feminists who perpetuate this fear in the first place.
Bringing the fear of rape to light is not the same thing as fear itself. We're pointing out just how prevalent rape is in society. Is it scary? Yes, of course it is. But it's much better to put this shit out in the open where everyone can be disgusted by it than to leave it in the dark where no one will see just how often it happens. And when we point out just how many times rape occurs, you blame us for being the real problem? Fucking hell, you're such an asshole.
It's the feminists who over-exaggerate rape statistics and talk about how often women get raped, and makes it sound as if you're going to get raped next week if you haven't been already.
Can you provide any sources or examples of feminists over-exaggerating rape statistics?
It's because of feminism that a woman would have this fear to begin with. I don't think feminism wants to stop women from being afraid. I think they want to perpetuate this fear to maintain the victim status.
At this point, you're just sounding like a conspiracy theorist. Again, just because we point out the prevalence of rape in society, and just because we point out that a lot of women are afraid of being raped, that doesn't mean that we are the reason that people are being afraid. Instead of blaming feminism for women being raped, or being afraid of being raped, why don't you instead blame the rapists who are doing the actual raping?
Besides, what exactly could be done to make women less afraid to walk down a dark alleyway?
I've already explained this.
There will be muggers, murderers, and rapists out there. Crime can't always be stopped.
Crime can't necessarily be stopped completely, but it can certainly be prevented a lot. This absolutist mentality of, well, crime is going to happen anyway, so might as well not do anything to prevent it, is not helping anyone. Yes, there are punishments for criminals, but punishing criminals is not adequate enough to prevent crime. It only addresses the after effects of crime. It doesn't cut it off at the source. In fact, I'd argue that rehabilitation is far, far better in terms of preventing crime than punishment ever could, but that's a different topic for a different video. All I'm saying is that a lot of crime is created because of the social surroundings and how people in society interact with each other. There's a reason why most serial killers and spree killers have come from terrible backgrounds.
The only thing we can do is punish criminals for their illegal actions, and we already do have laws against violent crimes.
Like I said, just because there is a law against a violent crime, that doesn't mean that the violent crime won't happen. Simply saying, well, there's a law against it, so there isn't much of a problem here, isn't going to do anyone any favors.
This fear that somebody may have is an individual thing. Not every woman would be afraid of walking down a dark alleyway. Maybe she knows the area. Maybe she took a self-defense class. Maybe she's armed. Maybe she's not a paranoid feminist and isn't constantly living in fear that she's going to be raped at any minute.
So every woman who is afraid of being raped while walking down a dark alleyway is a paranoid feminist? Wow, are you stupid? And if someone is armed and taking self-defense classes, doesn't that mean that she's actually afraid of being raped, kidnapped, or killed, or anything of that sort? Why else would they have to carry a gun or learn how to do karate? The narrative you're trying to create here doesn't really make much sense at all.
And this fear isn't unique to just women. A man can be afraid of these very same things if he wants to walk down a dark alleyway. Not every man is Charles Bronson. He can just as easily be a victim of a violent crime just like a woman can be. In fact, it's more likely that a man would be a victim of a violent crime than a woman.
When it comes to assault, beatings, and other such crimes, then yes, men are more likely to be the victims of these crimes. But when it comes to rape, women are far more likely to be the victim of it than men. And that's a crime that women tend to be the most afraid of when they walk down the street at night. Also, you make it seem as though men aren't afraid of walking down a dark alleyway, despite the fact that they're more likely to be beaten. But what makes you say this?
But feminists envision men as the perpetrators of violence, so it's hard for them to imagine men ever being the victims of a violent crime. To them, men don't have to fear anything, they are the ones to be feared.
No, we don't see it that way. We understand that just as men can be perpetrators, they can also be victims. And just as women can be victims, they can also be perpetrators. That's what feminism tries to do. We're trying to show people that although the majority of rape is done from men to women, that's not the only type of rape that happens. At all.
On the other hand, feminists see women as weak and think that women are always the victims and could never be the perpetrators of a violent crime.
We don't claim that women are weak. We claim the exact opposite of that. We don't always see women as the victims, because we also understand that men can be the victims of rape, and women can be the perpetrators of rape as well. You know, it's easy for you to tell your impressionable audience all about what feminists think, without actually showing examples of most feminists thinking this. It's easy for you to create this caricature of feminists, while your audience probably has never even met a single feminist, apart from like Big Red or Anita Sarkeesian or something.
So yes, feminists tell women how frequently rapes occur, but at the same time, they also tell women that they shouldn't have to worry about rape at all.
Wait, what?
They say it shouldn't matter what the woman wears, how they flirted, or where they were.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Saying that a woman has the right to wear whatever they want, and flirt as much as they want, and be wherever they want, does not in any way insinuate that women shouldn't worry about being raped. What the fuck is wrong with you?
But this would only lead to more women getting raped.
No, it wouldn't. Rapists don't give a shit if a woman is flirty or wearing revealing clothing. This is negated by the fact that Saudi Arabia has a high rape rate. In Saudi Arabia, the majority of women cover their bodies and their faces. And in a country where it's the custom for women to be obedient to men and to be as unsexual as possible, there is a very low probability of a woman being flirty over there. Yet, they still have a high rate of rape. So, obviously, the style of dress or the flirty behavior of a woman are not what causes someone to rape a woman. Also, you make this straw man about how feminists are saying that only women are being raped. Yet you say that the reason why many of these victims are raped is on the account of their outfit or flirty behavior. So what about male rape victims? When they were raped, was it because they were showing too much skin? Was it because they were flirting? Yeah, I doubt you'd even consider that to be an option.
Feminists don't see the difference between the way things should be and the way things really are.
No, we certainly do. That's why we try to change the way things really are to the way things should be.
Nobody should be raped, robbed, or killed. I agree with them on that. But violent crimes do happen, and people need to make smart choices on how to live their lives.
Yes, that's true, but if you're going to teach someone to prevent them from being a victim, instead of teaching someone to prevent them from being a perpetrator, or not putting enough emphasis on the latter, then there's something fucked up about our priorities.
But try telling this simple logic to a feminist. He or she will say you are blaming the victim, or you condone rape, or you're making excuses for the rapist. Let me make something clear. If somebody commits a crime, I blame the person committing the crime. I never say it was the victim's fault. Saying what the victim could have done to avoid getting raped is not the same as placing blame on them.
But when society spends more time telling people how to avoid being raped, instead of telling people how not to rape people, then, once again, our priorities are fucked. And who are you to tell someone how not to get raped? Most rape that occurs is done from someone who the victim knows, like a family member or a friend or a colleague. How are you supposed to avoid rape in that situation? If it's someone you meet on a regular basis, like a friend or colleague, then you run the risk of potentially being raped every time you're near them. Simply covering up or not being flirty isn't going to do a damn thing.
I should have the right to walk down a street in New York City holding $1,000 in my hand so that anyone can see my money. And if I get robbed, whose fault is it? The person who robbed me, of course. The blame is completely on them, but I might have avoided getting robbed if I kept my cash hidden or didn't carry so much cash on me.
Just because you say that you blame the thief entirely for stealing the money, that doesn't mean the rest of society will see it that way too. There are plenty of people who would sooner say, well, you should have kept it hidden. It's kind of on you if you didn't keep it on your wallet, rather than, that stupid thief, I hope he gets caught. Not to mention that the primary intent of stealing is to retrieve possessions. So if you flash your possessions around, then this means that you're a bigger target for thieves, because that's exactly what they're after. Whereas with rapists, the intent of rape is not sex, it's power. So it doesn't really matter all that much what the victim is wearing or how they behave, because rape is not about sexual attraction, it's about dominance. So to compare mugging to rape just doesn't make sense.
Crime happens, so it's only smart to try and avoid it if you possibly can.
You make it sound as if crime or rape is like bad weather. We shouldn't try to alter it in any way, we should just change our ways in order to make sure that we are not a victim of the crime and we're best suited for it. Well, crime is not like bad weather. Crime can be lessened and increased. It's possible to eliminate a lot of crime. I'm not going to get into that here, maybe another video in the future.
Thinking about why a criminal act was committed is not the same as blaming the victim. Looking for a motive is not the same thing as making excuses. Detectives always look for the motive behind a crime, but nobody thinks that they're looking to excuse murder.
The thing is, the way you supposedly look for why the crime happened is just a way for you to blame the victim. Instead of asking why the rapist would commit such an awful crime, you instead tell the victim not to dress so provocatively, or not to walk in the bad part of town. That's not looking for the motive of crime, that's just further berating the victim for something they had little to no control over.
Interestingly enough, feminists saying that women should be able to do, say, and wear whatever they want and never worry about getting raped would only lead to more women getting raped.
No, we say that women should do, say, and wear anything that they want, but that rape is also a very real possibility, and that they should be worried about it. Like I said before, there is no real connection between how someone looks and acts, and whether they're raped. It's absurd to even make this connection.
But people telling women what they could do to actually avoid this violent crime are labeled as victim blamers and rape advocates.
Because, for the 100th time, most of those people tend to focus more on telling people what they can do not to be raped, instead of telling people what they can do to not rape in general. What we're doing is we're implicitly telling people that the responsibility is in the victim's hands to not get raped, instead of saying that the responsibility is in the perpetrator's hands to not rape. Do you not see how fucked up that is?
In other words, feminists are made to look as if they want to help women, even though they're really not. But the people who actually do help women are seen as the bad guys.
Already explained this.
Here's something else I've noticed. Feminists always say that a woman should be able to walk anywhere without worrying about getting raped, but they'll never say that a man should be able to walk anywhere without worrying that the woman who is walking in front of him, who just so happens to be walking the same way, will suspect him of being a stalker or a rapist.
Yes, that is a problem, and it sucks to be thought of as a rapist or a stalker when you're walking at night and then there just so happens to be a woman right in front of you. But it's not nearly as big of a problem as under 1 in 5 women being raped, which is why you won't hear feminists talking about it that much. I mean, yes, it is a problem to be, well, not really accused of rape, because that would mean you're formally accused, but to be thought of as a potential rapist. But it's even bigger of a problem if women are actually being fucking raped. So forgive us feminists for not really talking about it that much.
So yes, feminism harms men by making them out to be the criminals and the perpetrators of violence. And it harms women by making them out to be the victims of society and making them feel like the odds are stacked against them. I prefer to treat women like adults, not like the weak and incapable little children that feminists make them out to be.
No, feminists want to challenge the status quo that we have concerning gender. And what you're doing is you're just complaining about that. You don't give a shit about treating women like adults. You just don't want to have to come to terms with the fact that the world isn't as peachy and rose-tinted as you think, where people can just learn karate or own a gun and voila, no more rape. You don't want to come to terms with the fact that on account of you being a white male, and yes, he is white, go check his channel, you are, on average, more privileged than non-whites, women, non-white women, and a whole plethora of marginalized groups of people. It's a lot easier for you to live in that little bubble of yours, where systemic discrimination doesn't exist, instead of stepping out of that bubble and staring reality right in its ugly face.